Hey everybody, Stu Smith here going live. I hope you are well. Happy Monday. We are going to chat about a few things real quick before we start taking questions. But typically, the way this works is I'm going to give a quick little talk while people hop on and then just start asking questions if you have them, and I will answer them. Hopefully, I have plenty of time to get everybody's questions, but if I don't, you can always email me stu@stewsmith.com, and I will answer you back. So, real quick, I'm writing an article today about trusting your training. Do you trust the training program you are on? Because it's real easy, go into a program and have some doubts about it. I think that's healthy. Uh, but there's a couple questions you need to also ask yourself on that. And the first one I always ask, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Right? How are your efforts? Do you trust your efforts to do? If it's a 6-day a week program, are you doing all 6 days? Are you missing some? Are you lowering the intensity? Are you adding to it? Right? That might interfere with your progress. So there's a lot of reasons why you may not see the results you seek depending on how you are doing that workout or not doing it or adding too much to it. So there's a little balance there that you have to be honest with yourself too whenever you say, "Yeah, I'm doing the whole thing." But are you doing extra stuff? Are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? All of those are important parts of your recovery that equal your performance increases. Um, are you pushing your limits? Are you finding ways to push that final rep? Are you finding ways to run a little bit faster, swim a little bit faster? Just with your effort levels alone has nothing to do with technique or the workout itself. Are you pushing yourself basically? Um, do you see the results you need to see before you actually join the military? If that's one of your goals, and you can replace that with any goal. Are you patient and trusting the process? Are you assessing yourself on occasion? And that's probably the biggest, most important piece of this is if you're on a program, and I don't care whose it is, it could be mine, it could be anybody else's out there, it could be yours that you just made up. If you're not assessing yourself to see if you're getting better regularly, then you don't really know, right? You're really just guessing. So, my advice is, and this is for my programming as well, assess yourself, see if it's working. Now, give it some time. You do need to trust the process for 4 to 6 weeks at least to see if you're going to see any type of gains. But if you don't start noticing improvements in your performance within a month, chances are you have one or two problems. One, your effort levels, or two, the programming's not going to work for you, or it's not working yet. And you get these answers by assessing, right? Trust but verify. You've heard that one before. Same thing goes for training. You want to trust what you're on and doing is going to work for you. But if it doesn't, you need to find something else. Period. Try something else. And don't be in a hurry. Be patient, trust the process because these training programs do work if you do them. And I always say I have a way to train, not the only way to train. Many programs out there, but I will tell you, um, to the person, that if you do these programs, they will work, but you got to be smart about it and also adhere to recovery protocols, nutrition, hydration, and instead of giving yourself a timeline, like, hey, I'm turning 18, I'm going to go to join the Navy and be a SEAL. Instead of doing that, how about actually giving yourself a performance starting line? So now you know, if I can reach these numbers, I have a really good percent of making it through that training, or at least understand that I have the ability to make it through that training. It really comes down to not necessarily, am I physically able to do this? Do I really mentally want to be able to do this? Right. Because there's a lot more to it than just being physically strong and having great endurance. It's like, do you really want to endure this discomfort for as long as you're going to endure it? Um, Especially if it's a very challenging goal that you have, or especially a spec ops selection goal that you have. So trust the process, but verify and assess regularly. That is my conclusion to this introductory topic. Looks like people are popping in some questions now. um, But my first paragraph, let me just read this first paragraph to you, just kind of understand where I'm coming from with this little introduction. Is, if you plan to challenge yourself by attending any Spec Ops program selection course, you likely are training hard just to get accepted into the training. If you're one of those wise ones to focus on the following phases of training, actually getting through the training after crushing the entry level fitness process, then you likely have been on this journey for quite some time. Whew, that's quite a sentence. I need to fix that. So anyway, I wanted to hear myself say it because it didn't look right when I was reading it to myself, and I got some editing to do. So you guys are catching me in my kind of brainstorming process of this article. And I'll probably refer back to this little video as well as some of your questions if you guys have them. So let's see. Owen says he is doing the 110-1 pyramid workout right now. It's a classic, one of my favorites. If you don't know what the pyramid workout is, maybe you need to do some research on training, because I love pyramids. In fact, I wrote an article about my first pyramid, and I think we all have our first pyramid story. Mine was at the Naval Academy, and I got my butt handed to me, and I was like, "Man, I got to get better at this." And it was an easy thing to kind of constantly assess yourself on. One day you get to 7, next week you get to 8. That's one thing I like about the pyramid, is that it is not only a great workout that has a build up, a max out, and a cool down all built into it, but it is a perfect weekly assessment of, are you seeing progress? Is a 110-1 pyramid easier this week than it was last week? That's a great assessment tool. That's why I like putting them in there. So kind of goes back to my introduction. In fact, I may have to put that in there. Talk about the pyramid, because that is an assessment tool. In fact, I'm going to put a little note in there. Good job, Owen. So thanks for your online training. I'm 5'8", 230, power lifter, trash mobility. I went to the past without any experience in swimming, bombed the swimming. Well, that will happen. What do you expect? Do you expect to like crush swimming if you suck at it one day and get better at it overnight? But unfortunately, a lot of people do that. A lot of people join, whether it's the PS, take the PST or the past or IFT now that they call it, and thinking, oh yeah, sit ups. I'm pretty good at sit ups. 18-year-old Stu made that same mistake. You know, say, oh yeah, I can do that. I can do 80 sit ups. That's easy. I didn't even get 65 because I just screwed up my pace. My first military fitness test ever. So, yeah, I get it. Let's see. I found your channel. It's helped a ton. I'm better at swimming than I've ever thought possible. I have ways to go, but your training really does help. Oh, good, Jordan. Nice work. I think we all need to learn at some point that if you take one of these tests, it's going to tell you what you suck at. I think this is a great title of this video just because, if you're not assessing yourself, you're just guessing. And that's so true. So, whatever training your program you're on, or whatever strengths and weaknesses you think you may have, you don't really know until you test them, right? Is strength one of your weaknesses? Is endurance one of your weaknesses? You won't really know until you're lifting and doing calisthenics tests and timed runs and timed swims, rucks. It's got to be part of the program. Otherwise, you don't even know where to start. Let's see, what do you say? I'm at MEPS now, heading out for basic. I've used your Spec Ops and ACFT programs. I feel super physically prepared. Good job, man. Go get them. Hey, Stu, are you going to make more to, through, and after videos on your channel? Yeah, I got a couple of things in the hopper. Um, to be honest with you, I've just been kind of busy in my mornings, and about the only time I can do these in my house is in the mornings. But I'm think I'm going to build an actual office with a studio. I have a gym for videos as well as like soundproof rooms for making good audios. Right now, I'm just in my basement. This is my office, my basement. So it gets a little loud here in the afternoon. So I'm somewhat limited to doing podcasts. Even these things, I have to do them in the morning. Otherwise, my house gets quite noisy after lunch. Everybody's up and moving around and doing stuff. Let's see. Hell yeah, man. Every Monday. I did it last week. I already feel stronger from doing it. Also, really appreciate the books. I'm following the advanced calisthenics program right now. That's a real good one, Owen. I will tell you, I have had a lot of people start off with that one, somewhat kind of beginner, intermediate level, and then build up to do that advanced one. And then they had some of the best PST scores that I have ever seen in a rather short period of time. So, I mean, it is all calisthenics and cardio. I think there may be some dumbbell work in there, but not a whole lot. But I mean, if you really want to focus on your cals and cardio, that's a great one to do it. And it's a good way to build up. And then you can jump right into like, the programs like this that are just a little more, take you a little more past the PST, because you got the regular PST, which is all cals and cardio, but there's also longer runs, longer swims with fins that are incorporated in that workout. So it's kind of a, yes, we're focusing on the PST workout primarily, but we're also starting to go into phase 2 of tactical fitness and preparing you to get through the training. What's up, Nicole? How are you, sir? Ran 10K 2 days in a row. Now, each under 1 hour. I'm a bit confused over the form. Am I supposed to fall into the next step or spend energy moving the rear leg to the front? That's a real tough one. You're going to see multiple explanations on running. I personally like to do a little forward lean and use a somewhat moderate to high back kick, which will bring your leg forward. So you're kind of falling into it. You know, explaining people how to run verbally or in written word is really tough. My advice is to watch a couple of YouTube videos of guys that are really good at running. And I'm talking about, if you're looking at 10K runs and somewhere in that, you don't want to watch a sprinter do it because that's different. You don't necessarily want to watch a marathon runner do it. But then again, those runners are running sub 5 minute mile pace. You watch those guys, some of the really good ones, watch them run. I would do that and see what kind of visual cues that you can pick up versus these fairly arbitrary terms about falling into your next step and high back kicks, and it gets a little confusing until you see it. So that's my advice for you. If you really want to see good running, find someone online, that's a running coach, that's, you know, world class marathoner or whatever, and just watch them run. I mean, that's how I learned how to swim. That's how I learned how to run better. Just watching people really good at running and swimming. What was the best part of your military career? Good question. Um, I would say, you really do feel like you're part of a team. And growing up, I mean, ever since I was 6 years old, I played on some kind of sports team. So it felt like something I did every year was play on some sports team every season. I played sports all throughout high school and was on that team. And you leave high school and you go into college and you find other teams that you're on, and then you after that you join the military and or join the military before college, either one, and you find that your buddies are that team. It becomes your social group. It's just a lot of fun. I mean, really had a good time. It was a lot of hard work, but at the same time, it was very rewarding. Just learned some really neat things. I never felt like I was the smartest person in the room. I was always learning something from somebody, whether it was the kid from Detroit teaching us how to, pick locks and, uh, start cars, you know, hot wire cars. I mean, it's just to the guy that's inventing lasers and, night vision. I mean, it's just insane the amount of knowledge that goes through some of those guys, and you're just constantly in receive mode and learning. I think that was the best part, and it was tough leaving. I will say it wasn't an easy leave for sure. It reminded me that you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your training. Absolutely, that's a good one. I like that one. After drinking half the pool while learning to swim, it really it sink in. Good one. Let's see here. Good morning, Stu. Good to see you, brother. Hey, you too. Um, yeah. So I think I just hit all the questions there. If you got more, send them. I am looking for more. In fact, I'll probably write another article today. In fact, I was thinking about a topic that I saw recently that was pretty cool. I think it was a study or a group. Maybe you guys can expand upon it. Um, Possible story idea here. You guys aware of the Uniform Services University? Right, it's a basically a med school for military doctors, and there's a human performance resources uh, section in the health and military performance uh, program that they have over there. And they do some cool stuff. They got some good studies in here that they do, especially for heat casualties that they see often during the summer months. And it's been a hot one. If you're working in Texas or south, you're getting scorched this summer. So they do a lot of those heat casualty studies and ways to rehab and get off medical stuff. So I think I'm going to write something on that today. So it's a little bit more of a informational piece than it is me explaining about um, workouts. But those are places where you can get some really good information about the military. In fact, I'll put this link in here for you. You can learn a little bit more about the human performance resources that are within the military and some of the things they do. I have a whole team of doctors and physiologists that are trying to figure out the best way to have a soldier or Marine or airman seaman actually perform better, which is really cool because here's the thing: when I first started fitness, none of this existed. There was no such thing as tactical fitness or military human performance resources. Unfortunately, it took a 20-year war for us to realize we needed to do that. Um, all the money, so to speak, was being spent on professional athletes and Olympic athletes. So there was or you were the other end of the spectrum and, dealing with diabetes and chronic illnesses. There was nothing in the middle for the tactical athlete. And now there are just countless studies on police departments and fire departments and sleep studies and nutrition and diabetes studies in the military and high performance stuff like mental toughness. All of those things are being studied now by doctors and physiologists that actually can create some kind of, at worst, just statistical analysis to show us like these are the type of people who are making it through the training. And it helps with your preparation. Make sure you are going to be one of those type of people. All right, let's see what else we got here. What's the gold standard for a 500 meter? Well, there's two things I want to um, mention. Is that there's 500 meters for like the Air Force pass test or the IFT, and there's 500 yards for the Navy. So make sure you know the difference because it's a big difference. Because if you think you're in a meter pool and you're in a yard pool and you stop at 500, you're missing out on about 50 yards of that 500 yard to 500 meter difference. It's about 50 yards, real close. Like 450 meters equals 500 yards. 554 yards equals 500 meters, right? So make sure whenever you are training, you know the length of those pools because that will change a whole lot depending on what test you're taking. But for me, I don't care what test it is. I think the gold standard is no matter what stroke, unless you're wearing camis like the Marine Corps does, is a yard per second or meter per second. I give the meter ones a little bit more because it's a little longer. So, um, if you do a yard per second in a meter pool, you're probably going to get about a 9 flat for a 500 meter, but for a 500 yard, you'll probably be at the 820 mark. So that's my gold standard for anybody doing CSS in a 500-yard pool or whatever 25-yard pool for 500 yards. I try to get them done in 500 seconds. 820. That is my personal standard. Um, I think the military allows you, I mean, a good competitive score for the CSS or breaststroke is 930. So I tend to flirt around with a minute faster than the recommended times, just to be ahead of the ball game. There's something I've always kind of made myself nervous about over the years is if I'm too close to these minimum standards, then I am uh, just barely surviving versus actually competing. So if you can get down to like an 820, 830, you're going to be competing with the top 10, maybe 20% of the class as part of the best swimming, in the group. And with high attrition rate schools, you always want to play around in the top 10 to 20% because that's just healthy. When only 10 to 20% graduate, you want to be in the top to 20, 10 to 20%. So that's my gold standard is a yard per second. I don't know the handicap for elevation, though I will say after probably 5 to 6 months, you will get into better condition while at elevation. And whenever you take the test on sea level, it'll probably be even faster. So I wouldn't think mentally that you need a handicap for elevation. It's just one of those things that I think is a psychological crutch for a lot of people. I mean, I played rugby games at elevation and we just worked out harder for the month prior and did two a days just to get in better cardio shape and was able to handle, mile high rugby fields, back in college. So just got to get in better shape. So send a video of you swimming 50 yards or 50 meters of whatever you're doing, and I can tell you if it's a technique issue or if it's a conditioning issue. 9 times out of 10 is a little bit of both, but sometimes if you fix a little bit of a technique because you've been working so hard because you've had poor technique, that fixing of the technique into a easier effort level for swim can make you faster, last longer, and um, just be more efficient in the water. So, my best answer for you, hi old Troy, is to send me a video and I can see what you're doing right or wrong. Any advice on what advice do you have between someone deciding SEAL and EOD? They're both very rewarding programs. What programs do well in each? What backgrounds do well in each of these programs? Um, Great question. I love both communities very much. Some of my best friends are EOD guys. Had many students become EOD officers and EOD enlisted. And I would say this I would say EOD is pretty technical. You're going to have to study wiring diagrams and understand ignition switches, just so many different things that you're going to have to realize and do the math on, explosives and weapons engineering and things like that. So it's a little more technical and mechanical, I would say the EOD community is. But you have to get to where the bombs are. So you're jumping, you're you're diving. Um, you got guns on too, and sometimes the booby traps are part of a CQB mission, and you need the EOD guy there. They're on direct action missions as well, so they're invaluable. And SEAL's a cool job too. I mean, I would say the EOD is just a little more technically advanced. It's still a hard community. You got to be really good at diving, got to be really good at treading. The aqua side of Navy EOD is very challenging, very hard. Um, Very similar to the SEAL side for like second phase, but there's not like that hell week that you have to endure. So maybe a little less physically demanding, but technically and technique demanding for sure for EOD. Will your programs help me get a six pack? I don't know. I mean, put it this way, I don't have a six pack. I've had them, and every time I had them, I was always sick. Right. So there was a time long ago, I made a decision like, you know what? being that lean is not worth it. Just having a little bit of body fat on, I don't know, helps me fight off illnesses, and I'm rarely sick. Every now and then I'll get a bronchitis that's usually allergy induced type of things, but you know, it's up to you. I mean, I think most of your success with a six pack is going to be done with your nutrition and dieting, because you really do need to burn fat. Everybody has a six pack. It's just whether or not you're going to see it or not. So yeah, you got to do some ab exercises. You got to do a lot of fat burning. Got to like limit your extra calories so you're in a deficit and burning fat constantly. Um, so it's a uh, little bit more on the nutrition side. But my answer to you is just about any program will help you get a six pack. It's the other 22, 23 hours a day that's going to determine whether or not you have a six pack, in my opinion. What's your approach to break that 80 push up mark when testing? As in rest 20, rest 20, rest 20, rest 10, rest 5, rest till you break the 80 mark. Um, I usually do this. My first minute is all out. And if you should be able to do better than a rep per second in that first minute. Like sometimes I'll get 70, 75 just in the first minute. And then from there, I do sets of 5 or 10 for the last minute. So I kind of burn it out. That's just my strategy that I do. I don't recommend it for everybody, but it works for me. Um, and you just crank out as many as you can, because my theory is the the slower you do those push-ups, gravity's going to take them away from you. So just exert on the up, let gravity take you down. Don't waste a lot of energy on the eccentric phase of that exercise. Just explode up, fall down, explode up, fall down, and just try to get in a rhythm. You're only pushing, you're only pushing. You're not letting yourself down slow. You're letting gravity take you down. That tends to help with some endurance with that exercise. Same for pull ups and sit ups. Um, letting gravity take you down to a degree. But yeah, I like to crank out as many as I can in a minute, and then from there it's sets of 5 or 10 until that last minute's up. And usually I get over 90, sometimes over 100. What's a good performance assessment for people not going into the military or after they left? What are good body composition measures, BWI or BMI and body fat? Um, BMI is kind of a joke. I think I've always been like in the overweight, obese state of BMI. Doesn't really account for any muscle mass that you have on your body for your height. And if you're like a really short guy and 220 pounds, but jacked and no body fat whatsoever, you're going to be obese on the BMI scale. So, um, body fat, it's a little different for men and women. Um, I personally uh, try to keep myself in the low teens. Um, if you can keep yourself in the teens period, I think that's going to help you be a leaner person. If you're in the 20s or even in your 30s, 30 percentile body fat, that's a little high. Um, you just want to try to bring it down to at least low 20s if you can. Depending on your age and you know male or female, those are going to differ significantly. But a good performance assessment, I would say, would be think about, just being an asset in some way. Are you something happened in your house, or people going to have to come into your house and rescue you because you can't get out. Now it's different if you broke a leg or something, but um, can you get out of your house? Can you carry somebody out of your house? Walking a mile for time. Um, upper body type strength stuff would be, I guess push-ups would be smart because you're always pushing yourself. If you're on the ground, you're pushing yourself up. Can you do a couple of dips, to take from a seated position to a standing position? How many squats can you do in a minute just to work on some muscle stamina? There's so many different ones. I in the Tactical Fitness Over 40 program, there are a couple of different assessment tools that I use for that group. But my advice personally is what a lot of people do and find these somewhat enjoyable is they do one of two things. They'll either compete in some form of physical event like a powerlifting tournament or obstacle course race or 10K, right? And that is their performance assessment that they like to do for themselves. The other one is to pick one of 30 or different 30 or more different fitness tests that are available out there in the military, and they're usually adjusted for age as well. So you can see what a 55-year-old Marine needs to be able to perform on pull ups, planking, and a 3 mile timed run. Same for the Navy, um, with different events. So that is something that might be interesting. Look at the age bracket for PFTs in the military and get one that's close to you because I doubt you'll see many that are, over 59. Might see some in the 60s, but it's pretty rare. I think most people are out of the military by 65, I think. So that may be limiting to some degree, but you'll see some standards there that aren't super challenging, but it's a start. And then you can say, "Hey, I'm in the shape to be a 40-year-olds. I reached the 40-year-old standards for Navy fitness." Um, if you're 65, that means a lot, I think. I had a guy who was 52 who wanted to join the Navy. Father Hogue, he was a priest out of Annapolis here, and wanted to join the Navy at 52 and be a chaplain. He had to pass the fitness test, had to lose 80 pounds. He got to that point, stayed in the Navy for 12 years, I think, um, until he had to retire. And he always worked really hard, and he worked with Marines primarily. So he would do the Marine Corps fitness test and see where he ranked for his age. And he said his goal was to always be, 20 years younger than his age. So if he was 58 at the time, he would try to shoot for 38. And those were his goals. So just some ideas for you, but I like your thinking. Hey Stu, what's the lightest person you've ever seen make it through SEAL training? My athletic background is in cross country, and I'm 140 pounds soaking wet. I would say you're going to be a great runner, probably too good a runner, and you need to put on some strength training just to be durable. I mean, those first 4 weeks of SEAL training just crush people who have no durability. And I don't mean ground impact force durability from running. I mean load bearing durability, boats on your heads, logs on your shoulders, backpacks on, and firemen carrying people in soft sand. I mean, all of that is just a different energy system than running cross country. So I think your athletic history is great, and you will for sure not have a running weakness. But putting on some mass, some strength, learning how to swim and tread, And all those things, if you're pretty lean, you'll probably sink. So being negative and trying to tread is even harder. Those things cannot be ignored. So my my advice would be to put on a little bit more mass on that, especially if you're tall. If you're 5'5", 140 pounds, I've seen guys that size get through. I've seen guys less shorter than that and weighed about that 140, maybe 150 pounds get through, but they were strong. I mean, most of them were wrestlers, lifted weights, got good at running, got good at swimming, and were able to get through there. The durability issue is going to be your weakness. So I'd get in the weight room personally, and don't even worry about running more than 30 miles a week. Just stay low. You shouldn't be running 70 miles a week. Nobody cares what your mile and a half time is after the first day of buds. If you can run a 23-minute 4 mile, you're going to beat everybody in the class. But then if you get crushed by a log and can't go past week two, it's just a statistic that they're gonna use that statistic as saying if you can run at sub 24, chances are you're gonna get crushed by a log because it happens. Huh. I'm not sure what this question is. What is the retribution? That makes very little sense in whatever you're asking. So I don't understand. I've been stuck at 2,600 meters per hour with big boy fins. What's a good per hour, spec ops per hour? I don't think I've ever asked you. I go with the same pace, a yard per second, right? So if you're doing a yard per second, okay, that's 500 yards in 820. That's 1,000 yards in 1640. And I'll give you the 17. Let's say 17. Now let's double that, 2,000 yards in 34, right? Keep it under 35. So now 4,000 yards under 65, right? Is that right? Yeah, under 70, 65 to 70. So for an hour, I would say you should be in that 3,500 range. Chances are you're bicycling your legs. I don't know if you've ever seen my videos on swimming with fins. And, if you're not used to swimming with legs from your hips and you start bicycling your knees, if it feels like you're riding a bicycle, you're getting very little use out of your fins, and it's going to slow you down tremendously. But there is no big difference in time. There's a big difference in how you feel, and you got to remember the big fins aren't going to make you necessarily faster. The big fins are there to get you through currents and tide changes, things like that you're having to swim against that require power. So it is a power differential, not a speed differential. So you got to get used to putting in a little bit more leg power from the hips and butt versus, bicycling your knees like this and barely making a dent with those fins. If your ankles hurt, you probably have some weak ankles and lack ankle mobility. So that is something that takes some time as well to get used to. I can't run and lift in the same circuit like in your workouts. How can I work around that? Break them up. You know, just my advice is just when you see that column of workouts, just do them in a day. So if that means you have to do all your weight training in a different type of setting, just get the reps, get the weights, and then mix in some calisthenics if you can. if they're on the list, and then go do your cardio at the end, or do your cardio first. Mix it all up. Maybe do your interval stuff first, do your weight training, and then go do your longer distance cardio after that. But, there's no generic training program, right? And I would call this a generic training program to go crush the PST. And when you have a day like that with a whole lot of stuff in it, right, you're going to have to personalize it to fit your schedule, right? For me, like rarely follow this plan or some of these plans because I have to swim last versus swim first. Even though I might put it up at the top for swimming, you can swim whenever you want. And if you can't swim that day, bump it to a day that you can. Sometimes people double up their swimming. So in the end of the day, try to get everything you can in that column. If there's something you missed, bump it over. See if you can double up something the following day. Because I kind of have things set up in a way where you can move a swim over to a mobility day, or you can do something if you need to, if it doesn't work. But at the end of the week, see if you can get everything done, whether you had to juggle it or not. So is it the same with the run? 8:30 mile and a half. Now looks like it is an uphill battle for me to hit 8:30 or 9:30. I'm not sure what you're asking. I mean, what the same? There's a whole bunch of conversations going on here, Roger, that I'm not clicking with you. I mean, an 8:30 mile and a half is a little bit different than a 9:30 mile and a half. But it is conditioning, and it's two things. You got to work on your aerobic base, but you also need to work on your ability to move your legs faster. So you are actually learning to run at that pace. My advice would be to, if you're at 9:30 now, um, and it's very hard, try to see if you can do 9:30 with a little less effort, right? So there's a gut check pace and there's a little pull back pace, but you're still hitting that pace. So make sure you're on the pace. And if you can't do it, maybe you should um, have a smaller goal closer to what you're currently doing, right? Maybe instead of a whole minute, you drop it 30 seconds and shoot for that pace for a while with your intervals. Eventually, it all come through for you. You just got to be diligent about it and hit some paced runs. Goal pace running is the key to running faster. And then you can mix in a whole bunch of other different cardios like swimming and biking and even a few long, slow distance runs in a month to work on that aerobic base. What are your thoughts on SF Ranger fitness compared to SEALs? I They're a little bit different. I mean, SEALs are going to be better in the water. Rangers are going to be better with a ruck. Period. Just the way it is. They get a lot more time under load than SEALs do, but SEALs get a whole lot more time in the water than Ranger SF guys do. So I would say that'd be the biggest difference. Everything else, same. Strength's the same. Um, maybe speed and agility's very similar with the obstacle courses and things that they need to do. But it's the swimming and the rucking that is the biggest differentiator. Do you run 2 mile PFT like a sprinter or like a marathon runner? And what about for 5 mile PFT? That's a great question because it is not a sprint. It is also not a marathon, right? So it is more of an intermediate level run. Um, I guess compared, if you were to look at a track like the Olympics at track, You got the 100-meter guys that are sprinting. You got the 400-meter guys that are also sprinting, just doing it longer. You got the 800-meter guys that are a little bit more intermediate. They're slowing that pace down a little bit. Like they couldn't compete necessarily in a 400, but some of them are doing really fast 400s and then pretty darn fast second 400 for that 800. Then you got well, got the 1500-meter guys. They look completely different than the 100-meter guys. So there's a different level of conditioning for all of those. But here's the thing, none of us need to be world class runners to do a 2 mile timed run and a 5 mile timed run. You just need to be good at running and get your aerobic base up to a point and your mileage up to a point where you can handle it and not be hurting. But my advice would be this: I always try to get my 2 mile PFT times, mile and a half to 2 miles, to a 6 minute mile or faster. So that means every 400 I'm doing, I'm right at that minute 30. Every 800 I'm doing, I'm right at that 3 minutes. So I'm doing a 6 minute mile or faster for that 2 mile timed run. Now, for the 5 miler, I'm a little slower. So you got to back off your pace and learn how to run a 7 minute mile run. In fact, I wrote this article a while back ago with a running program on it that makes sense for what you're trying to do. In fact, I want you to read this article I'm about to post in the comment section. It's called Running Plan 20 Miles a Week to Get You to and Through Selection. It is focusing on two paces: a 6 minute mile pace for your timed runs and a 7 minute mile pace for your 4 mile or 5 mile timed runs that you're going to see in training. Now, I will say this: the Army is in the process of changing their 5 mile timed run for their Ranger PFT, at least for RASP, could be for Ranger too. Instead of push ups, sit ups, pull ups, 5 mile timed run for Ranger School or RASP, it is going to be a 1 mile timed run, 6 pull ups, 100-meter farmer walk, 100-meter up downs. Basically, they call it individual movement techniques. Basically, you run, you get down on like you're shooting, you run, get down like you're shooting. So it's like doing burpees over 800 over 100 yards, probably 6 burpees or something every 15, 20 yards. Then you run 2 miles timed, and that total event has to be under 27 minutes. That is the new RPA, Ranger Physical Assessment Test. So look into that if you're thinking about going Army Ranger RASP. And there's going to be a new test here in 2024 that they're already testing. I've had a few guys say, hey, we didn't have to do 5 miles, only ran 3. So they're testing it now. I find it hard to swim in the ocean without goggles. What advice do you have? I have, well, I guess I've done swimming with goggles, but at Buds, you're going to do it with a mask. So it shouldn't be that much different other than your nose is covered. I've never done any swimming in the ocean without a mask or goggles. So at Buds and even in the teams, we always wore masks. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking. Is the difference between wearing a mask or goggles your problem, or wearing goggles and nothing at all your problem? Because if it's nothing at all, you don't need to worry about that. It's not even something you need to do. How do you prevent getting SIPE or other illnesses at Buds? We did a couple of podcasts on, one, trying to stay healthy. Don't just keep your hands clean, don't touch your mouth, keep your fingers out of your eyes and ears and nose and whatever. And that was long before COVID. COVID just enhanced that. It's hard to do, to be honest with you. SIPE We also did one on SIPE as well. Um, Swimmer induced pulmonary edema, which is basically water gets in your lungs and now you're coughing up blood and it gets nasty. Um, so a lot of that has to do with constriction. Like if your wetsuit is really tight, and if you Google SIPE, you'll see that it is really prevalent with triathletes. A lot of times their tight wetsuits constrict the flow of blood, which can cause the SIPE to occur in the first place. It's not able to get out uh, it's a circulatory issue with blood and water is not able to get out water as well as it should be able to with expiration. So anyway, check that out. Could be a tight wetsuit. Could be a whole bunch of different factors, which I am not well versed on. But there's a lot of information out there on it. A lot of studies on there on it that are usually geared more towards triathletes, but seals are in the water every day and they swim like that too. So I would say it's probably very similar. The reasons why they're getting it as well. Let's see. Patricia says, I'm interested in reestablishing muscle strength and conditioning throughout weightlifting. I'm going to be 48. My question is, how should I lift 5 days a week or only a few times a week? I was planning on weekend being my recovery days, and definitely open to your advice. My suggestion would be try every other day. When you're starting out, you don't have to get too aggressive with like learning split routines like push pull legs or upper body lower body splits. Maybe just do something a little bit of everything versus too much of one thing every day. So maybe do a full body day where you get on some machines and some dumbbells. Maybe warm up with some calisthenics, get on the machines and dumbbells, and then cool down with some cardio on one day. And it's the whole body. So you're pushing, you're pulling, you're doing squats, leg lifts, or leg levers, or leg press, and leg extension, leg curls. You could try some deadlifts in there, whatever you feel comfortable doing. My advice, if you're new to resistance training, maybe start off with the machines, evolve into dumbbells, move into kettlebells, move into barbells, but let that take about a year before you do all of that. Um, and I would just go every other day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday type of thing. Um, Full body days with cardio days in the middle. Um, Maybe cardio core days or mobility days in the middle would be a really good idea on Tuesday, Thursdays, and then rest over the weekend. I think that's a good way to get started. And then from there, everything evolves into, you know, how heavy do you want to go and what kind of split routine do you want to use and what are your goals now? But my advice is build a foundation with just every other day, full body day circuits. And after, 3 to 4 months, you'll really notice a difference, um, and see where that takes you. And of course, email me when you get there or along the way. Happy to help you with some ideas. All right. So today I'm going to redo the 40 plus baby boomer workout. Nice with modifications for rotator cuff bicep injury. I am sick of resting. Any encouragement or advice? Yeah. One, good job. Time to get moving. Maybe focus more of your day on like core activities and legs and cardio versus too much from the start on upper body stuff. Though it sounds like you could probably do some pushing exercises that are pretty safe. Just be careful with the pulling with that bicep tendon because that gets up there in the shoulder too, cause some shoulder pain. Um, so be careful with the rows, the pulls, pull ups, especially. You might want to go pull downs with a little lighter weight to start off with, just to work some range of motion in there and then maybe build up to pull ups if you're going to do that. But yeah, I would focus more on core and lower body days You know, mix in some mobility work for your upper body days instead of actual resistance exercises. But that's where I would go with that. Make a few adjustments like that. Just so your shoulder feels like it's moving, but it's not getting hurt while it's doing it. Owen says, wow, last week I couldn't even complete the pyramid calisthenics workout. Had to substitute pull ups with banded pull ups. Today I finished it. Everyone go check out Stu Smith's calisthenics books. That's awesome. Hey, good job. It does work. I mean, you really do see really big gains at the beginning of and I can't say that's just only true for mine. Any routine you're going to see gains if you do them. We tend to have like this, you know, exponential growth at the very first few weeks of training, and then it kind of plateaus a little bit, and you might see a little bit more a little bit later, plateaus a little bit, sometimes it sink down, right? But um yeah, those first few months are usually really exciting. So build good habits during those first few months, because one, consistency matters, and two, um that's where you're going to build your discipline on those days that you're not necessarily motivated to go see no results because you're in the middle of a plateau, but you do it anyway. And that's very important for this journey. All right, couple more questions. I got to go. It's been an hour already. That was quick. Stu, what would be the best way to get my 500-meter time down to 8:20? Currently, I'm at 8. Oh, 9:30 for 400. Um, my advice would be do the 50-50s. Have you seen that workout? The 50-50 workout? It works really well. In fact, I'm going to put it in the comment section. I have seen people go from 10:30 to 8 flat in 1 month using this. Now, I will say this, they were in my presence when they did this, and I was able to fix their swim technique to go from to really good. So send a video of you swimming 50 meters, and I can make sure there's not a technique issue that's slowing you down more than a conditioning issue, because it's typically both. But if you're not fixing that technique issue, your improvement is really going to lag behind your conditioning. You might be getting in great swimming shape, but because your technique sucks, it's not going to really, you're not going to see it on the watch. If crunched for time, do you prefer to run, swim before lifting, or vice versa? Mm. Regardless of being crunched for time or not, my advice is whatever you are worse at doing, do first. Because one, you're going to be better at doing that weakness at full ability. And if you're running late on your schedule, you can always work things that you're really good at, um, easier, quicker, more efficiently, to maintain what you're not so good at, um, or maintain what you're good at doing. But you really want to focus on what you're not good at first. So depending on where you are on that range, are you a strength guy or are you an endurance guy? If you're an endurance guy, I would lift first. If you're a strength guy, I would run first or swim first. If you want to just get good at everything. All right, last question. I got to bail. What rest times do you recommend for building muscle, gaining weight? Need 20 pounds for 6'1", 190. Um, you know, uh, it really, for that type of workout, it's going to go back to the old school bodybuilding, powerlifting days where you actually did rest in between sets versus doing a whole lot of active rest like I tend to do now for more work capacity goals. So yeah, do your something I would do just to make it a little more productive. Maybe do like a bench with a dumbbell row, right, as part of that rest, and then rest a little bit before you get ready to do another bench. Because your goal is not really, if your goal is building strength, that's a different type of rest. But if it's just putting on mass, just you know, rest, but not too much, and you can do some opposing muscle group that works as a active rest for you and get things done a little quicker. All right, folks, I do need to go. Been here a while. If I missed any of your questions, you can always email me them, stu@stewsmith.com. In fact, read it right here on this little scroll here. And in fact, go to stewsmithfitness.com and use the Live15, save 15% on books and ebooks. And always, you can ask me questions about them anytime. I'll see you tomorrow. Bring some swim videos with you if you want. All right, take it easy.